You are a stain on this floor, Vane. Don't breathe the same air as my guests. Get back to the shadows where you belong.
If you stop this upload and save my honor, I will leave everything, my rank, my family, I will marry you. Just save me.
In the world of high-stakes intelligence, there is a wall between those who make history and those who simply clean up after it. Cordelia Sterling, the Ice Queen of the FIB, rules her department with a silver tongue and an iron heart, viewing the common worker as nothing more than background noise. Silas Vane is that noise, a man with no record, no past, and a mop in his hand. But behind his silent gaze lies a warrior who was once the nation's most lethal asset, now living a life of penance in the basement. When a digital ghost strikes and the elite agents fall into a trap of their own making, the hierarchy of power is inverted. In the humid, oil-slicked darkness of the Foundation, the woman who once spat at his feet must now beg for his mercy. One choice, one wire, and a promise that will shatter the foundations of her high society life forever. The grand hall of the Federal Intelligence Bureau smelled of expensive cologne and floor wax. Silas Vane moved his mop in rhythmic, silent arcs across the white marble. He kept his head low, a ghost in navy blue work clothes. Above him, crystal chandeliers cast long shadows that danced over his scarred eyebrow. He was a man paid to be invisible, and he played the part perfectly. A sharp clack of designer heels echoed against the high ceilings. Cordelia Sterling marched through the lobby, surrounded by a phalanx of suited subordinates. Her slate gray suit was crisp, mirroring the cold precision in her icy blue eyes. She didn't look at the floor. She looked through the people around her. To her, the building was a machine, and she was its master engineer.
Silas stepped back to let the procession pass, but a stray bead of soapy water remained. Cordelia's obsidian pump hit the moisture, causing her to stumble for a fraction of a second. The silence that followed was heavier than the marble pillars. Her subordinates gasped, their eyes darting between the director and the janitor. Silas stood perfectly still, his charcoal gray eyes fixed on the floor.
"You incompetent animal," Cordelia hissed, her voice vibrating with restrained fury. She looked down at a tiny damp spot on her leather shoe, as if it were a mortal wound. Silas did not flinch, though his broad shoulders tensed beneath his industrial shirt. He offered no excuse, only a slight, respectful nod of his head. His silence seemed to agitate her more than a spoken apology would have.
"Do you have any idea what this suit costs, Vane?" she demanded, stepping into his personal space. "It is worth more than 10 years of your miserable, silent life." She turned to her deputy, a smug man in a gold watch who was stifling a laugh. "Why is this relic still breathing our air? Clear him out before he contaminates the entire summit."
Silas looked up then, his gaze meeting hers for a fleeting, dangerous moment. "Director, the ventilation in the East Wing is cycling at an irregular frequency," he said quietly. His voice was deep, carrying the gravel of a man who had seen too much. "It suggests a manual override is being attempted on the primary server mainframe. I strongly advise a physical security sweep of the basement levels immediately." A ripple of mocking laughter erupted from the group of elite intelligence officers. Cordelia's lip curled in a sneer that didn't reach her beautiful, cold eyes. "You fix leaks in pipes, not leaks in national security," she snapped. "Stick to your mop and your fantasies of being important, Silas. If I see your face on this floor again tonight, you will be escorted out in handcuffs." She turned her back on him, dismissively flicking her hand as if shooing a fly. The entourage followed her toward the elevators, their whispers of "trash" and "janitor" trailing behind them. Silas watched them go, his hand tightening around the wooden handle of his mop. He saw the flicker of the overhead lights, a rhythmic pulse that no one else noticed. He knew the signature of a dead hand virus better than any man alive. He retreated to the maintenance closet, the only place where he was truly alone. He pulled a small, encrypted radio from a hidden compartment in his tool chest. The frequencies were dead, filled only with the hiss of white noise and digital static. The lockdown had already begun, silently severing the building from the outside world. The elite minds upstairs were walking into a digital slaughterhouse. In the command center, Cordelia sat at the head of a massive glass table. Her monitors suddenly flickered, displaying a single blood-red skull against a black background. The doors hissed shut, their magnetic locks engaging with a terrifying final thud. Panic flared in the room like a match in a dry forest. Her technical leads hammered at their keyboards, but the screens remained frozen and unresponsive.
"The dead hand has been triggered," his voice shouted, his voice cracking with pure terror. "Every classified file in the FIB database is being uploaded to an offshore shadow server. If we don't bypass the physical relay in the basement, the director will be flagged as the traitor." Cordelia felt the blood drain from her face as she looked at the security feed. She saw the basement levels flooding with heavy fire suppression gas.
She remembered the janitor's warning and felt a cold stone of regret form in her stomach. The elevator was dead, and the stairs were sealed by emergency shutters. She looked at the vents, realizing they were the only way down into the dark. Through the thick glass of the command center, she saw a shadow moving in the hallway. Silas Vane was no longer mopping. He was moving with the predatory grace of a wolf. Red emergency lights pulsed like a dying heart throughout the command center. The air grew thin as the life support system switched to a secondary failing loop. Cordelia gripped the edge of the glass table until her knuckles turned white. Her subordinates were weeping or shouting at unresponsive terminals. The prestigious director felt the walls of her empire closing in. A heavy metal grate in the ceiling groaned and then plummeted to the floor with a deafening clang. Silas Vane dropped down from the ventilation shaft, landing silently in a crouch. His navy blue workshirt was soaked with sweat and streaked with black grease. He did not look at the chaos around him as he stood up. He ignored the gasps of the elite agents who recognized his weathered face. "Stay back, Vane," the deputy director yelled, with a voice trembling from fear. "This is a level 10 security breach, not a broken faucet in the lobby. You have no clearance to be in this room or near these machines." Silas did not even turn his head toward the shouting man. He pulled a heavy thermal cutter from his industrial tool belt. "The server door is magnetically fused by the virus," Silas said, with a voice like cutting glass. "If that upload reaches 100%, the backtrace will frame you for espionage." He stepped toward the high-voltage panel near the back wall. The metal was already beginning to glow with an unnatural blue heat. The smell of burning silicone filled the stagnant air. Cordelia stumbled toward him, her chestnut hair falling from its severe chignon. Her gray suit jacket was gone, and her silk blouse was stained with dark sweat. She looked at the man she had called an animal just hours before. The icy blue of her eyes was now clouded with tears and raw terror. She realized no rescue team was coming through the locked steel shutters. "It is going to kill me, isn't it?" she whispered with a voice that was hoarse and small. "My father and my fiancé will all let me rot in a cell for this failure." She looked at the screen where the progress bar hit 89%. The elite world she had built was crumbling into digital dust. She reached out and her trembling fingers brushed the rough fabric of his sleeve. Silas paused, his charcoal gray eyes finally meeting hers in the dim red light. "There is a manual bypass behind the main transformer, but it requires holding the contact. The surge will likely stop my heart once the circuit finally breaks." He spoke about his own death as if it were a simple maintenance task. His calm was more terrifying to her than the screaming alarms. Cordelia's grip on his arm tightened as her desperation overrode every rule of her status. "If you do this for me and save my life, I will give you anything. I will leave this world, and I will marry you and stand by you." She did not care who heard her reckless emotional vow in the darkness. She only saw the man who held her destiny in his calloused hands. Silas did not smile, but a strange softness flickered in his rugged features. "I do not want your world, Director. I only want to finish the job." He turned back to the glowing panel as heat singed the hair on his forearms. He reached for the heavy brass keys on his belt to use as a conductor. The air hummed with the sound of 1,000 angry hornets. He shoved the high-voltage cover aside, revealing a maze of sparking wires and melting plastic. A jet of superheated steam hissed from a broken pipe, scalding his shoulder. Silas did not make a sound, merely gritting his teeth until his jaw muscles bulged. He began to strip the primary cables with his bare fingers. The smell of ozone and burning insulation grew thick in the cramped space. Cordelia watched him, her breath hitching as she saw the sheer discipline of his movements. He moved with a lethal precision that no simple janitor should ever possess. Every spark that hit his skin was met with a stoic refusal to flinch. She saw the ghost of the warrior he used to be. For the first time, she felt a burning shame for her earlier cruelty. The upload hit 98%, and a high-pitched whine began to vibrate through the floor. Silas grabbed the two main conductors, and his body jerking as the electricity hit him. His charcoal gray eyes locked onto Cordelia's one last time. The room exploded in a blinding flash of white light. Then, the entire building fell into a deep and terrifying silence. The smoke in the server room curled like gray ghosts around the machines. Every screen in the room went dark for 3 agonizing seconds. Then a single green line pulsed across the main monitor. It read, "System integrity restored," and "Threat neutralized." The red emergency lights faded into a calm white glow. Silas Vane leaned heavily against the smoking high-voltage panel. His navy blue shirt was charred at the shoulders and stained with dark oil. His hands were blackened from the surge, but they did not tremble. He drew a slow, ragged breath that rattled in his chest. Cordelia stood over him, her face streaked with tears and soot. The heavy steel shutters of the command center groaned as they began to rise. Fresh air rushed into the room, carrying the scent of rain and city streets. The elite agents who had mocked Silas sat in stunned silence. They watched the janitor struggle to his feet with grim determination. He looked like a king standing amidst the ruins of a battlefield. Black-clad tactical units flooded the room with weapons drawn and laser sights dancing. The commander of the unit froze when his light hit Silas's face. He immediately lowered his rifle and signaled for his men to stand down. The room went quiet as the commander stepped forward with an expression of pure awe. He snapped his heels together and offered a crisp, professional salute. "Welcome back, Commander Vane. We thought you were a ghost," the soldier said. The deputy director's jaw dropped so low it seemed it might hit the floor. He looked from the dirty maintenance keys to the man being treated like a god. The elite officers whispered among themselves as the truth of the redacted files emerged. The man they had called trash was the most decorated operator in the nation. Cordelia felt a wave of heat wash over her face as she remembered her insults. She had called him an animal and mocked his very existence. Now she stood before a legend who had saved her world without saying a word. Her bespoke suit felt like a costume of a child playing at power. She looked at his scarred eyebrow and saw the history of a hero. 3 days later, the rain tapped against the windows of a private recovery wing. Silas sat on the edge of the bed with his hands wrapped in white gauze. He wore a simple, clean shirt and looked toward the horizon with a calm gaze. The door clicked open and Cordelia entered carrying a small leather case. She had traded her gray power suit for a simple navy blue dress.
A man in a tailored tuxedo followed her into the room with an arrogant stride. It was Julian, her fiancé, and the son of a powerful senator. He looked at Silas with a mixture of boredom and lingering contempt. "Cordelia, we have a gala to attend, and the press is waiting," he said sharply. "Leave the help to his recovery, and let us go back to our lives." Cordelia turned to Julian, and her icy blue eyes were harder than diamonds. "There is no more us, Julian, and there is no more of this fake life," she said. She reached into the leather case and pulled out her engagement ring. She placed the massive diamond on the side table without looking back. Julian sputtered in rage, but the look in her eyes silenced him instantly.
"You do not have to keep a promise made in a moment of terror," Silas said quietly. He looked at his bandaged hands and then back at the window. "I am a man of shadows, and you are a woman of the sun. Our worlds were never meant to touch, let alone merge." He spoke with the same stoic discipline that had defined his silence.
Cordelia walked to the bed and took his bandaged hand between her own palms. "I was a woman of glass and vanity until you showed me what honor looks like," she whispered. "The promise I made wasn't a challenge or a debt for my life. It was a realization that I have been searching for someone like you forever." Her voice broke as she leaned down and kissed the scar on his eyebrow.
Silas finally let out a long breath, and his charcoal gray eyes softened with genuine warmth. He stood up and walked toward the door with Cordelia's hand left in his. They walked past the hospital guards and the clicking cameras of the gathered press. The former janitor and the elite director disappeared into the crowded city streets together. They left behind the world of rank and titles for a world of truth.